The gunshot echoed across the Montana plains as Violet Thompson watched her life shatter like a mirror dropped on a saloon floor. She stood frozen, clutching the door frame of her modest homestead as dust swirled around her skirts, the retreating figure of the man she'd thought would be her forever growing smaller against the vast horizon of 1882. "Richard!" she screamed, her voice cracking under the weight of desperation. "Richard, come back!" But the thundering hoofbeats continued without pause, carrying away the man who'd promised her the world and left her with nothing but a half-built life and broken promises. Violet sank to her knees, the warm spring air doing nothing to soothe the chill that had settled in her bones. 3 days later, Violet sat at her kitchen table, staring blankly at the wall. The coffee in her cup had long gone cold. Her honey-blonde hair, usually pinned neatly, hung in loose waves around her shoulders. At 23, she never imagined she'd be abandoned on the frontier, left to manage a struggling homestead alone. A knock at the door startled her from her daze. Standing on her porch was Sheriff Miller, his weathered face tight with concern. "Miss Thompson," he began, removing his hat. "Got word from Billings. Seems Richard was seen boarding a train eastbound, had a woman with him." Violet's grip tightened on her cup. "He's taken everything, Sheriff." "The money, my father's pocket watch, everything we'd saved." The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. "There's more, Miss Thompson. The bank's called in your loan. Without payment by month's end, they'll take the property." After the sheriff left, Violet hurled her cup against the wall, watching it shatter like her dreams. 28 days. She had 28 days before she lost everything. The next morning, Violet rode into the small town of Pine Ridge, determination hardening her features. The town was bustling with its usual mix of ranchers, merchants, and drifters. She tied her mare outside the mercantile and stepped inside, heading straight for the notice board. She scanned the various postings ranch hands needed, cattle drives forming, teaching positions in neighboring towns. Nothing that would earn her enough quickly. As she turned to leave, a deep voice stopped her. "Looking for work, madam?" Violet turned to find a tall man in his early 30s watching her. His clothes were dusty from the trail, but well-maintained. A cattleman's hat sat atop dark brown hair, and his eyes, blue as a summer sky, studied her with interest. "I might be," she replied cautiously. He tipped his hat. "Flynn Isaacs, madam. I've got a ranch about 10 miles north, looking for someone to help with cooking and keeping books for the outfit." "Pays fair." Violet straightened. "I can cook well enough, and I kept all the accounts for my—" She hesitated. "For my homestead." Flynn nodded. "Heard about your situation. Small towns talk." Violet felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I don't need charity, Mr. Isaacs." "It's not charity I'm offering, but a job. My last cook broke his leg, and I've got 15 hungry men who can't tell salt from sugar. As for the books," he shrugged. "Never was much good with numbers myself." Violet considered her options. Working at Flynn Isaacs' ranch would provide income, but leaving her homestead unattended worried her. "I could ride out daily," she suggested. "Keep my place while working for you." Flynn shook his head. "Trail's dangerous for a woman alone, especially with the Blackwater gang causing trouble." "Got a cabin on my property you could use. Weekends free to tend your place." Violet bit her lip, considering. "I'd need to know more about the position, Mr. Isaacs. Come out tomorrow, see the place, meet the men, then decide." As promised, Flynn sent one of his ranch hands to escort Violet to the Rocking Eye the next morning. The journey took them through rolling grasslands dotted with grazing cattle, past streams cutting silver ribbons through the landscape, and finally up a gentle rise that revealed the ranch spread before them. The main house was larger than Violet expected, built of sturdy logs with a wide porch. Outbuildings, corrals, and a bunkhouse formed a horseshoe around a central yard. Men moved purposefully about their tasks, mending tack, shoeing horses, repairing fences. It was a working ranch in every sense, alive with industry and purpose. Flynn emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. "Miss Thompson," he called, striding toward her. "Welcome to the Rocking Eye." He helped her down from her horse, his touch respectful but firm. "Let me show you around." The tour revealed a well-maintained operation, larger than most in the area. Flynn spoke with pride about his herd, the quality of his stock, and his plans for expansion. The kitchen was spacious but desperately in need of organization. The ledgers, when Flynn showed them to her, were a scattered mess of hasty notations and crossed-out figures. "As you can see," Flynn said with a rueful smile, "we need help." Violet ran her fingers over the chaotic books. "This will take some time to sort through." "Time's something we've got," Flynn replied. "What we lack is skill." After meeting some of the ranch hands, a diverse group of men who treated her with surprising respect, and seeing the small but comfortable cabin that would be hers, Violet made her decision. "I'll take the position, Mr. Isaacs, provided I can tend to my homestead on weekends and that my wages are fair." Flynn's face brightened. "More than fair, Miss Thompson. You'll earn enough to save that homestead of yours, I guarantee it." That evening, as Flynn escorted her back to her property, Violet felt the first stirrings of hope since Richard's departure. The sunset painted the plains in hues of gold and crimson, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and promise. "I'll send someone for you tomorrow," Flynn said as they reached her door. "Pack what you'll need for the week." Violet nodded. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Isaacs." "Flynn," he corrected with a gentle smile. "If we're to work together, might as well use our given names." "Violet," she offered in return, extending her hand. His calloused palm met hers, warm and steady. "Until tomorrow, Violet." The following weeks established a rhythm to Violet's new life. Weekdays at the Rocking Eye were filled with early mornings preparing breakfast for the ranch hands, afternoons organizing supplies and untangling the chaotic bookkeeping, and evenings cooking hearty suppers for hungry men who increasingly sang her praises. Flynn proved to be a fair employer, never questioning her methods but appreciating the results. The kitchen transformed under her care, becoming efficient and well-stocked. The ledgers began to make sense, revealing that the ranch was more profitable than even Flynn had realized. Weekends, true to their agreement, Violet returned to her homestead. Flynn always insisted on escorting her personally, claiming the trail was too dangerous for a woman alone. These rides became a time of conversation and growing friendship. "How'd you come to ranching?" Violet asked one Saturday morning as they rode side by side through a meadow bursting with wildflowers. Flynn's expression grew distant. "My father started with 10 acres and 3 cows after the war, built it up slowly. When he died 5 years ago, I took over with 200 head. Now we're approaching 1,000. "You've done well," Violet observed. Flynn nodded. "Been lucky. Good men, good land." He glanced at her. "And now good books," she laughed, the sound carrying across the open plains. The state of those ledgers was criminal. Flynn Isaacs never claimed to be good with numbers, he chuckled. Just cattle and horses. When they reached her homestead, Flynn helped her down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Need help with anything while I'm here?" Violet hesitated, then nodded toward the leaking roof. "That's been getting worse." By sunset, Flynn had repaired the roof, fixed the loose boards on her porch, and chopped enough firewood to last a month. As they shared a simple meal, Violet felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the hearth fire. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked finally, setting down her fork. Flynn looked up, surprise crossing his features. Doing what? Helping me. The job, the escort, fixing things around here. It seems like more than just neighborly kindness. Flynn's gaze dropped to his plate. Maybe I know what it's like to struggle, to feel the weight of responsibility pressing down. He met her eyes again. And maybe I admire your determination not to be broken by circumstances. The weeks turned to months, and summer settled over the Montana territory with long, sun-drenched days and brief, star-filled nights. Violet's position at the Rocking Eye expanded beyond cooking and bookkeeping. She began helping Flynn negotiate cattle prices, her sharp mind proving valuable in dealing with buyers. The bank loan deadline approached, then passed, but Violet had earned enough to make the necessary payments. Her homestead was secure, at least for now. The relief she felt was profound, but it brought with it a realization her attachment to the Rocking Eye and to Flynn had grown deeper than she'd anticipated. One evening in late July, as twilight painted the mountains purple against the darkening sky, Flynn found Violet on the porch of her cabin, gazing westward. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, leaning against the railing beside her. Violet smiled. "I was thinking about how different things are now, how different I am." Different how? She considered the question. Stronger, I suppose, more certain of what I want. She turned to face him. Richard leaving was the best thing that could have happened, though I couldn't see it then. Flynn's expression tightened at the mention of Richard's name. "He was a fool," he said simply. "Yes," Violet agreed, "but a necessary fool. Without his departure, I might never have found my own strength or come here." Flynn's hand covered hers on the railing, his touch sending warmth up her arm. "I'm glad you did, Violet. The ranch is better for your presence." "Just the ranch?" she asked softly. His eyes held hers, the depth of emotion in them taking her breath away. "You know better than that." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then a shout from the bunkhouse broke the spell, calling Flynn away to deal with some dispute among the hands. "We'll continue this conversation," he promised, squeezing her hand before departing. But the conversation remained unfinished, as events took an unexpected turn. News arrived that the Blackwater gang had been spotted in the area, raiding isolated homesteads and small ranches. Flynn doubled the guards at the Rocking Eye and insisted Violet remain there rather than returning to her homestead on weekends. "It's too dangerous," he argued when she protested. "These men are ruthless, Violet. They've killed before." "My place will be left abandoned," she countered. "Better an abandoned homestead than a harmed woman," Flynn replied firmly. "Please, Violet, until the threat passes." Reluctantly, she agreed, but the forced confinement chafed. Though spacious compared to most ranches, the Rocking Eye began to feel claustrophobic as days stretched into weeks with no word of the Blackwater gang being apprehended. Tension grew throughout the territory. Neighbors viewed strangers with suspicion, and trips to town became rare and hurried affairs. When Flynn announced he needed to attend a cattlemen's meeting in Billings, Violet felt a spike of anxiety. "It's a 3-day journey there and back," Flynn explained, packing his saddlebags. "Jake and Thomas will keep watch over things here. You'll be safe." "It's not me I'm worried about," Violet admitted. "The roads aren't safe, Flynn." He paused in his preparations, turning to face her. "I've made this trip dozens of times. Not with the Blackwater gang active in the region." Flynn crossed the room to where she stood, taking her hands in his. "I'll be careful, I promise, and I'll return as quickly as possible." Their eyes met, and for a breathless moment Violet thought he might kiss her. Instead, he squeezed her hands and stepped back. 3 days, he repeated. No longer. But 3 days passed, then 4, then 5, with no sign of Flynn. Anxiety turned to fear, and fear to dread as Violet imagined increasingly terrible scenarios. The ranch hands grew restless, looking to her for guidance she wasn't sure she could provide. On the 6th day, Violet made a decision. Despite the protests of Jake, Flynn's foreman, she saddled her horse and prepared to ride to Billings. "Miss Violet, the boss would skin us alive if we let you go," Jake argued. "Flynn isn't here," she replied, tightening her saddle cinch. "And something's happened to him, I'm certain of it." "Then let me send some of the boys," Jake pleaded. Violet shook her head. "You need every hand here to protect the ranch. I'll be careful, travel only by day, stay on the main trails." Before Jake could formulate further objections, the sound of approaching horses caught their attention. Violet's heart leaped with hope, only to plummet when she recognized not Flynn, but Sheriff Miller leading a small posse toward the ranch house. The sheriff's expression was grave as he dismounted. "Miss Thompson," he greeted her, "hoped I might find you here." "What's happened?" Violet demanded, fear clutching at her throat. "Is it Flynn?" Sheriff Miller nodded solemnly. "Found his horse wandering near Elk Creek, about 15 miles east of here. Signs of a struggle, blood on the saddle." Violet's world tilted dangerously. "But not. You didn't find him?" "No, madam, no body, but there was this." He handed her a crumpled piece of paper, nailed to a tree nearby. The note was crudely written. "Isaacs will pay for testifying. Blackwater gang doesn't forget." "Testifying?" Violet looked up, confused. The sheriff sighed heavily. 2 years ago, Flynn testified against Jesse Blackwater after witnessing him murder a store clerk in Billings. His testimony sent Blackwater to prison. Seems his gang's been waiting to settle the score. Violet's mind raced. So they've taken him. He could still be alive. Possible, the sheriff conceded. But Miss Thompson, these are dangerous men. They've likely taken him into the mountains. My jurisdiction ends at the county line, and I've only got 3 deputies. So you're giving up? Violet's voice rose in disbelief. "I'm being realistic," Sheriff Miller replied. "I've telegraphed the federal marshal, but it could be weeks before they respond." Violet turned away, her mind made up. "Jake," she called to the foreman, "gather 5 of our best men. We leave at dawn." The sheriff stepped forward. "Miss Thompson, you can't be serious. This isn't some afternoon ride. These men won't hesitate to kill a woman." "They have the man I love," Violet said, the words coming easily, naturally. "I won't hesitate either." Despite further protests from both the sheriff and Jake, Violet spent the night organizing supplies and poring over maps of the region. By dawn, she had a plan: follow Elk Creek into the foothills where the Blackwater gang was rumored to have a hideout. 6 ranch hands volunteered, all experienced riders and marksmen. They set out as the first light of day crept over the eastern plains, determination driving them forward despite the dangers ahead. The journey was grueling. They followed Elk Creek's winding path as it cut through increasingly rugged terrain. Evidence of the gang's passage was sparse, but present a campsite 3 days old, horse droppings, a discarded whiskey bottle bearing a distinctive Billings merchant's mark. On the 3rd day, as they made camp in a sheltered gulch, one of the hands spotted smoke rising from a distant ridge. Using Flynn's spyglass, Violet confirmed what appeared to be a small cabin, partially hidden among the pines. "Could be trappers," Jake cautioned. "These mountains have plenty of honest folk living remote." "Or it could be them," Violet replied. "We need to get closer, see for certain." They approached cautiously as twilight descended, using the gathering darkness for cover. 2 men guarded the cabin's entrance, rifles across their laps as they passed a bottle between them. 3 horses were corralled in a crude pen nearby. "That's the boss's Appaloosa," Jake whispered, pointing to a distinctive spotted horse among them. Violet's heart pounded. Flynn was there alive, at least as of when they'd arrived at the cabin. But getting him out would require more than just the 7 of them charging in against unknown numbers. We need a distraction, she decided. Something to draw some of them out. The plan they formulated was simple but risky. 2 of the hands would create a commotion to the north, firing shots, making enough noise to suggest a larger group. When the gang members investigated, the remaining 5 would approach from the south, overwhelm any guards, and free Flynn. As the men prepared, Violet felt a calm determination settle over her. Fear still fluttered in her chest, but it was overshadowed by resolve. Flynn had given her a chance when she needed it most. Now she would do the same for him. The distraction worked better than they'd hoped. 4 men rushed from the cabin toward the sound of gunfire, leaving only 1 guard at the door. Jake took him down with a well-placed shot from his rifle, and they moved quickly toward the cabin. Inside, they found Flynn tied to a chair, his face bruised and bloody but his eyes alert. The relief that flooded Violet at the sight of him alive was overwhelming. "Violet." Flynn's voice was hoarse with disbelief as she rushed to untie him. "What in God's name are you doing here?" "Saving you, apparently," she replied, her fingers working at the ropes binding his wrists. A shot from outside signaled that their time was short. The gang members had realized the deception and were returning. Jake and the others took defensive positions at the windows while Violet helped Flynn to his feet. "Can you ride?" she asked, noting how he winced as he stood. "Have to, don't I?" he replied grimly. The gunfight was brief but intense. 2 of Flynn's ranch hands sustained minor wounds, and one of the Blackwater gang lay dead in the dirt as they mounted their horses and fled into the night. They rode hard for several hours, not slowing until they were well away from the cabin and back down toward the foothills. When they finally stopped to rest the horses by a small stream, Flynn pulled Violet aside. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice a mixture of anger and amazement. "It was too dangerous. If anything had happened to you—" "Nothing happened," Violet interrupted. "And I couldn't just wait at the ranch, not knowing if you were alive or dead." Flynn's expression softened. He reached up to touch her cheek, his fingers gentle despite his injuries. "Why, Violet? Why risk everything?" The answer was simple. "Because I love you." The words hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. Flynn's eyes widened, then filled with an emotion that matched what Violet felt in her own heart. "I never thought I'd hear those words again," he said softly. "Not after Sarah." Violet stilled. "Sarah?" Flynn nodded, his expression pained. "My wife. She died in childbirth 5 years ago along with our son. I never thought I'd feel this way again, never wanted to. The pain was too much," understanding dawned. "That's why you never, even though I felt." "I was afraid," Flynn admitted. "Afraid to love and lose again. But when they had me in that cabin, all I could think about was you. Your smile, your determination, the way you've brought life back to the ranch and to me." He took her hands in his. "I love you, Violet Thompson. Have for months now." Their first kiss was gentle, mindful of Flynn's split lip, but filled with the promise of deeper passion to come. The journey back to the Rocking Eye took 4 days, with frequent stops to rest Flynn and tend to the wounded men. When they finally crested the rise that revealed the ranch spread below, Violet felt a surge of emotion. This place had become home without her realizing it. Sheriff Miller was waiting for them, along with a federal marshal who'd finally arrived from Helena. The Blackwater gang's reign of terror ended within the week, with most members captured or killed in a decisive confrontation near the Montana-Wyoming border. As summer gave way to fall, Violet divided her time between the Rocking Eye and her homestead, where the harvest proved better than expected. Flynn visited often, helping with repairs and planning improvements that would make the place more profitable. "You know," he said one evening as they sat on her porch watching the sunset, "managing two properties is a lot of work. Might be easier if they were combined under one ownership." Violet raised an eyebrow. "Is that a business proposition, Mr. Isaacs?" Flynn's smile was warm as he reached for her hand. "Not exactly." From his pocket, he produced a simple gold band. "My mother's," he explained. "She made me promise I'd only give it to a woman as strong and true as she was." Violet's breath caught as Flynn slid from the porch swing to one knee before her. "Violet Thompson, you brought light back into my life when I thought the darkness would never lift. You faced down danger for me, stood by me, and showed me that love isn't something to fear but to embrace." His voice deepened with emotion. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled Violet's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Flynn. Yes." The wedding took place on a crisp October day with the aspen trees glowing gold against the blue Montana sky. The entire Rocking I crew attended, along with folks from Pine Ridge and neighboring ranches. Sheriff Miller gave the bride away, and the celebration lasted well into the night. As the festivities wound down, Violet found herself standing at the edge of the ranch yard, gazing at the stars scattered like diamond dust across the velvet sky. Flynn's arms encircled her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Happy, Mrs. Isaacs," he murmured. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied, leaning back against him. Flynn turned her in his arms, his expression serious. "I need to tell you something. Got word yesterday that Richard was spotted in Denver." Violet stiffened. "Why would I care about that?" "Because you deserve to know," Flynn said gently. "The woman he left with abandoned him, took what little money they had left. He's destitute, working as a stable hand." Violet considered this information, surprised to find she felt no satisfaction at Richard's downfall, only a distant pity. "It doesn't matter," she said finally. "That part of my life is closed." Flynn studied her face. "You're certain?" "I'd understand if there were still feelings." Violet placed her fingers against his lips. "The day you found me in town, looking at that notice board, I told you he was gone. And you said, 'Then he left you to someone who'll stay,'" Flynn finished, remembering. "You've kept that promise," Violet said softly. "You stayed. You fought for us, for this life we're building." Flynn's arms tightened around her. "And I always will." As they walked back toward the ranch house, their future stretching before them like the vast Montana sky, Violet thought about the twists of fate that had brought her here. Richard's betrayal had felt like an ending, but it had merely been the beginning of a far greater love story, one written in struggle and triumph, in danger faced together, and in the quiet moments of understanding between two souls who had found in each other exactly what they needed. The lights of the Rocking I glowed warm against the gathering darkness, a beacon of home and belonging. Flynn's hand was solid in hers, his presence a constant she knew she could rely on through whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they stepped into their new life, leaving the shadows of the past behind them.